I'm Nadine Brandis, the author of Fawkes and the Out of Time series, as well as my newest book that is coming out May 2019, Romanov, a historical fantasy retelling of Anastasia. And today I wanted to talk to you about the research process because my two most recent YA books, Fawkes, which released this past July, and Romanov, which is coming up, are both historical fantasies. So even though there's a fantasy twist, there was a ton of research that went into these books. And I've been asked a lot what it takes to research a book. So I thought I would share some of that because today is Guy Fawkes Day. Happy Guy Fawkes Day. Happy bonfire night. Everybody in the UK knows what I'm talking about, and a lot of people who aren't in the UK are like, what's that? Guy Fawkes Day arose from the gunpowder plot, where a group of 13 men decided that they wanted to blow up the King of England in the year 1605. And I wrote a fiction story about the son of one of the plotters who gets sucked into the plot because his father is part of it, and his father is Guy Fawkes. It's about everything that happened when the plot took place and how the plotters planned everything out. How many times can I say the word plot? There's a plot in this book about a plot. Haha. Anyway, I wanted to share some of my research process behind Fawkes because it was my first time writing historical, and oh my goodness, did I learn a lot. A lot of the creation process of a new fantasy world comes from understanding our world and then taking bits and pieces of that and adding fantasy or adding sci-fi still built from our knowledge of our own world. Without further ado, happy Guy Fawkes Day, let's get into it. So first things first, I did what any good researcher does, and I went to Wikipedia, the source of all knowledge. It's okay to start with Wikipedia. Is it a good source? If your college professors don't let you use Wikipedia as a source on your research papers, you probably shouldn't use it as an accurate source for your manuscript. Now, I went into writing historical fiction really wanting to capture the true story, both for Fawkes and Romanov, and then add fantasy to that, because I love when you can read a book and be taken into a foreign world but also learn more about your world. Now, when you're writing historical fantasy or historical fiction, I like to try and find a loophole. I try to look at the true story and see, okay, where's my story that I'm going to tell? Because I want to still have the freedom as a writer to take the story where I want to take it, and I don't want to be completely bound by historical facts. So with Fawkes, I found out that Guy Fawkes, one of the most famous plotters, may or may not have had a son. There's one record of it. It's not considered a reliable record. So I thought, aha, there's my loophole. I'm going to write Thomas's story. But you do have to start with a foundational knowledge of the world that you're diving into. So I did start with Wikipedia to just get a rough framework, a skeleton idea of the story that I was jumping into. I did have to find accurate resources, so eventually I branched out to historical documents as well as research by historians about that event. I had a whole bunch of books. These are all for Fawkes. These are two books that were put together by historians who studied this time period. They found the documents, they did the hard work for me, so then I just got to read basically their giant summaries and apply that to my manuscript. And there was so much more information in these books than anywhere I could find online. Then some of the other books that I got were The Time Traveler's Guide to Elizabethan England. So this talks about the food and what they wore and how they traveled and how towns were set up and all of that sort of stuff. And then I also got a book about Elizabethan swordplay, because obviously swords, 1605, duels. And I got the Oxford Illustrated Shakespeare Dictionary so that I could make sure that my character's speech was still historically accurate. Not totally accurate, because these and nows are really boring, and I mean, let's face it, Shakespearean talk is also kind of boring and confusing, but at least I could learn some of the words that they used, I could learn some of the style, and apply that to my manuscript. So these were all of my research books. Yes, it's a lot of reading to prepare yourself for writing. I had so much fun researching. It was hard, but I still had a lot of fun. So when you're researching a novel, pull out your inner Hermione, go to the library, go online, find some books and see who has written about the time period that you are going to write about. Something else that you can do is watch documentaries. I watched documentaries because I wanted to get visual descriptions. I'm a very visual processor, and that's how I get my best descriptions. So I would watch documentaries and I would pause them, or I would watch TV shows. There are lots of TV shows about the gunpowder plot. They are all kind of terrible. I would recommend watching the documentaries and TV shows after you've done a lot of your research already, because that will help you decipher what's true and what's not true, and you can pick and choose, because as cool as documentaries are, they're not as thorough as actual research books, and sometimes they don't get stuff quite right. Now, what is the best way that you could possibly research a historical event? My personal opinion is that you build a time machine and actually go back there and live through it. I tried that, didn't really work. So the next best thing is to go to the location that your event happened. This time last year, guess where I was? I was in London because most of my story takes place in London. So my husband and I took a 5-day trip, and actually it was really 3 days because 2 of those 5 days was traveling there and then traveling back. And so we had 3 full days in London. We went on a Guy Fawkes walk. We went to a lot of the historical places to get descriptions, to get more information, to immerse ourselves even deeper in the culture. Because for me, when I'm writing historical, I want to honor the people and the culture and just that story as much as I possibly can. So I went to London and it was a blast, you guys. I'm ready to go back. I had been to London several times before, but it was my first time going with an intent to study all things gunpowder plot and all things Guy Fawkes. I did this at the end of all of my research. I had written the entire book, and that was when I noticed the things that I couldn't actually research, like how long would it take to walk from Thomas's house to Emma's house. Yes, I could guesstimate, but actually going there and walking those paths myself was so enlightening. And we got to visit the Tower of London, which this is the Tower of London, and talk to the people who specialize in this history. And I got to see signatures carved into the walls of the characters I was writing about. I got to write down descriptions. I got to smell the smells and see the sights and just touch the stone and get textures and all of these different descriptions. And it's fun to walk those paths and picture my story taking place. So, researching a book. I started with Wikipedia. That didn't take me very far. Then I went into a pile of research books. And I read them over the course of writing my book. I didn't just binge read them all because I couldn't remember anything, but I took copious notes as I read these. After that, I watched documentaries, TV shows, or at least the ones that I could stomach. Elizabethan era TV shows, they're a little dangerous. And then I went to the location and spent 3 days there exploring the layout and getting all of the last details that I needed to enrich my story, finding that inspiration that's just sitting around on the cobbled streets. I was so pleased with how the story world came together with Fawkes. So if you're writing historical or anything that involves research, I hope that those are some tips that will help you know where to start with all of your research. If you have any questions at all about the research process or traveling or writing or whatever, please leave it in the comments below. And if you're wanting to keep up on my videos where I talk writing and publishing and all of the bookish things, please click subscribe or the little bell icon that gives you an email alert every time I post a new video. Make sure that you follow me on Instagram and Twitter where I'm at Nadine Brandis. And if you're interested in Romanov, my next historical fantasy, all of the pre-order links can be found below. With that, tally-ho!